Series 3 of TBI Expert View. In this series, we'll continue to discuss the evolving global VAT landscape, current trends, and topics that businesses should be considering as we move into 2023 and beyond. The first two series were a great success, with some episodes achieving over 40,000 views, and the feedback we got from you, our clients and our partners, and the wider VAT community was absolutely fantastic. So I'm hoping and I'm sure Series 3 will be just as informative and interesting for everyone. Over the coming weeks, we'll be announcing our guests and our topics for Series 3, so please stay tuned for that. However, as always, if you'd like to get involved, or if you have a topic that you would like us to include, or indeed you'd like to be a guest speaker yourself, please reach out to us. We'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you. For now, though, I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Dowling, our Senior Global Director of All Things VAT, and Nicoletta Petrosino, the Global Indirect Tax Manager at Nestlé. And Lisa and Nicoletta will be discussing VAT in the digital age.
Thanks, Catherine. Welcome to the Expert View. In this episode, we're going to talk about VAT in the digital age, the changes that are coming down the line for business from a digital point of view. I'm joined today by Nicoletta Petrosino, the VAT Manager from the Nestlé Group, to discuss this topic. Welcome, Nicoletta.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure for being with you.
So today we have spoken about this topic in great detail before at various conferences that myself and Nicoletta have met at. We're talking about lack of harmonisation, digital change that's coming into VAT compliance. We're seeing it in various forms. We're seeing it in mandatory B2B e-invoicing being rolled out throughout Europe. We're seeing it in various different digital reporting requirements also throughout Europe, SAFT, for example. We're seeing it for the platform economy. We're seeing it with simplifications in OSS and IOSS. And this all brings an element of a burden to business because there's various domestic changes that are being introduced. And so businesses are kind of struggling to keep up. And so we wanted to look at this topic then from the EU Commission's point of view and what the EU Commission has done this year to address those kind of burdens for business and to address kind of the lack of harmonisation in the VAT system in Europe. So Nicoletta, could you just maybe explain to us what the EU Commission has done this year to start to address those kind of issues?
Yeah, definitely. So, this year the European Commission launched a public consultation. So it was merely, to gather information from different stakeholders regarding three main pillars. So the idea is to have this consultation ending up into a draft legislation that will be probably out this year in November. We already have a kind of report of the findings that are coming from the consultation, but the final draft should be in November, and the package should be implemented in 2024 or in 2025. It really depends on the topic. So the three main pillars are on. First of all, digital reporting requirements. So the European Commission realized how is fragmented the regulation within the 27 states, and how it is heavy the burden on the business to comply with it. So they would like to go through a kind of harmonized digital reporting requirement. They will focus mainly on e-invoicing, and this will be also focusing only on intra-EU digital reporting requirements. The first benefit that you can have from this approach is to have the elimination of the intra-EU sales list and also of the interest. That is still a very good point, a very good outcome of this approach. It's also important to note that it is under discussion where the data coming from the taxpayer has to be kept, if at taxpayer level or at the central level. So in this last case, if the information are centralized within the tax authorities, there is still a benefit that is coming out, that is basically the pre-filed VAT return or the faster VAT refund procedure, and also more targeted audit to the business. The other,
So what are we seeing at the moment, though? So we saw that the mandatory B2B e-invoicing rolled out in Italy, and what was the benefit for business, or what were the gaps that the authorities there didn't consider? I suppose one of the big gaps there was kind of the refund procedure, and how the mandatory B2B e-invoicing impacted some of the VAT deduction opportunity for business in Italy. Particularly with kind of employee expenses, we saw that a lot of companies resident in Italy gave up their right to VAT deduction on those kind of expenses because they couldn't marry the e-invoicing process with their T&E flow, and so they decided that it was less burdensome just to give up the right to deduction, which is kind of a negative outcome of the rollout of mandatory B2B e-invoicing in Italy. So you'd hope then that any further rollout of mandatory B2B e-invoicing would take these into consideration. But as you say, the Commission are only looking at a very tight scope for e-invoicing and a harmonisation of e-invoicing. So we're going to continue to see these differences throughout Europe, you would imagine, for those mandatory B2B rollouts. We're seeing, developments in Poland, we're seeing developments in France, and already they even look different from each other. So the French model is different from what's being proposed for Poland. Poland seems similar to Italy, but businesses are still going to have to deal with these kind of differences, right, Nicoletta? And the EU Commission proposal and the policy suggestions that have been made really don't go very far to address those kind of differences that businesses are going to have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately, yeah. And we also have if there is going to be harmonisation, there has been commentary that just the IT infrastructure that's needed for the tax offices to be able to roll out these kind of changes is huge and very burdensome for tax offices as well. I mean, the benefits down the line are great, but the initial burden is very great too. And, the expectation is that, full rollout will take probably till 2030, which is, it's a long road and a long process. So that's kind of on the first kind of pillar, and then the second pillar that is dealt with in this proposal, or the consultation, I suppose. We're still kind of pulling together the information of the consultation, looking at that final report as a result of the consultation that was began at the beginning of this year. So the second pillar relates to the platform economy. So what can you tell us about this, Nicoletta?
Yeah, sure. So, as you know, in July 2021 was launched the e-commerce VAT package. So it was mainly introduced to tackle the fraud related to the low-value goods importation, and also to simplify the distance sales regulation for the business. So after the first 6 months of the implementation of the package, actually the Commission observed that they were able to cash in 8 billion of VAT from the IOSS and the OSS scheme introduced by the package, and also they were able to recover 1.9 billion of VAT related to the low-value goods importation. So this is a very good result already for them, and of course the idea is to improve the package as it is today. So the idea would be really to eliminate the threshold of 150 euro, and also to make the IOSS mandatory. Still, the IOSS is not perfect, unfortunately. So you see, the number can be stolen. It can also be not really verified by the tax authority, and this will end up into a double taxation. So the exemption at import will be completely lost, and this is also a pity. Other challenges are coming from the package. For example, it is really difficult to qualify the marketplace as an electronic interface, as it is defined by the regulation. And when it is defined as that, the deemed scheme supply should apply. And when it is applicable, still it is not possible to say that the business is relieved from the VAT liability, because still there are challenges on the VAT rate applicable to the product. So who is responsible for that, the marketplace or the producer of the product? If there is a challenge from the tax authority, who is responsible for that? And can indeed the marketplace kind of push back this responsibility to the business, and asking, for example, to apply a limited responsibility clause into the legal agreement. So how this can be managed, and these are a very tough point also into the negotiation with them, as you can imagine. Finally, what it is really complicated still is the reconciliation and the reporting of the VAT amount. So all these sales, as you can see, they are still into the business booking, but after they have to be reported, and the VAT has to be paid by the marketplaces. So it is still, kind of a magician that has to be done, so this magic is not always working. So the amount that is paid by the electronic interface to the tax authority has to be recharged to the business, and everything has to be, reconciled into the business account, because otherwise you may have an impact on your P&L, and this is the thing that nobody wants to have.
Mm-hmm. So there's still a big administrative burden. There's still lack of clarity on responsibility, and we still have this issue of the tax offices haven't really caught up with these kind of processes in order to validate an IOSS number, and then we still have fraudsters kind of catching up with the process as well and being able to kind of rob an IOSS registration number. So there's still definite issues there with the changes for the platform economy, and so hopefully this final report that we have in relation to the consultation will deal with some of those kind of the lack of clarity that we have in that regard. And so let's move on then to the final pillar. And so we have the single EU VAT registration. What is this one dealing with?
Yeah, so the last pillar is focusing on the single VAT registration, as you said. So as the OSS has been so successful, they would like to expand this scheme also to other transactions that today are not covered, like the movement of own goods when the final customer is a consumer, but also to supplies between non-resident companies where the reverse charge today is not applicable. So, and indeed, the other improvement that I would like to have is to extend as much as possible to all the other transactions where it is possible the reverse charge scheme, but still the scheme is not standardized, is not harmonized, and all member states has their own rule that has to be applied and the business has to cope with. This is not part of the improvement. So this harmonization is not part of the plan still, and also it's a pity that it's not part of the improvement. The granting the right of deduction to the OSS scheme, because as you can imagine, this creates still a big cash flow impact for the business.
Yeah, so again, VAT deduction is impacted really by these kind of simplifications that we're seeing, or these kind of process improvements that are being suggested. And, the inability to include your input VAT into these declarations is, again, a big burden and a big administrative issue for business. So, and as you say, we don't really see any kind of improvement there. We just see an extension of the one-stop shop, which doesn't include the right to VAT deduction within those declarations. So Nicoletta, thanks so much for going through the 3 pillars of the consultation, and that we would like to just kind of talk a little bit about what has happened now. So we had this consultation early in the year. Now we have this final report. So what's to be expected? The final report, I suppose, gave us kind of a summary of the pillars, the challenges for business, impact statements from the various stakeholders, policy suggestions. So what's next now?
Yeah, so what we expect is to have kind of draft of the regulation in November this year, and hopefully this, this will cope with all the issues that we just discussed. So, of course, it is very welcome the approach of the Commission of putting all the stakeholders around the table and consulting them in order to tackle this lack of harmonization within the EU. But still, it's a long journey, so I don't expect this to be fixed in this year or in the next year. So it will be a very long journey.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great approach to have this consultation paper, to get the stakeholders all together, to give their feedback and the challenges that they have, and to come up with this final report and to make a legislative proposal this year. But as you say, it's a very long road, and we don't expect kind of any immediate harmonisation or relief for business. But Nicoletta, what I would say is when we do have that draft legislation, maybe you could come back and talk to us again about what that means and the impact that will have for business.
With big pleasure.
Great. Thanks, Nicoletta. It was lovely to talk to you today.
Same for me. Thank you to you.
Thank you for listening to TBI Expert View. As always, if you enjoyed the conversation, please share and subscribe to get notified when a new episode is released. Bye.